You're listening to the Light Over Time podcast with David Sargent and Korey Bartos. It is 9/19/2023. How are you doing, bud?
Hey, I'm doing well. It's been a busy day. Been a busy summer, and I'm really glad we're winding out of that a little bit.
Right on. What are you drinking?
I'm drinking a cold brew. It's Ethiopia Kambata. I made this like 4 days ago, and it's still rocking, super chocolatey and a little blueberry.
Nice. I started my OPEX programming yesterday. I'm trying to hit 300 pounds by the end of next year. And so I'm drinking a protein shake because I have to eat at least 250 grams of protein a day, and it's really hard.
Yeah, I bet. Oof, that's a lot.
It's really intense. I'm not close. I need another 100 grams today to make it work. So I'm going to probably make 15 chorizo tacos when we're done here. And I'm going to eat all of them. All right. So I have a couple of things today that we'll talk about. But first, I want to talk about last night. Because if you follow us on Instagram, you'll have noticed that David had a freaking show yesterday, dude. Usually when you hit me up and you're like, yeah, dude, gonna go out and, try some lights or whatever, you're like, it's popping off in like Finland or Iceland or wherever the hell. And things are probably looking pretty good. Usually you get like some cool photos, but there was not a lot of fanfare on your social media, but it looked absolutely nuts. So tell us what happened. I'll share some photos while you're talking about it, but wow.
Yeah, so as far as me like not being super active, it's in a spot where unless I'm on like the top of one specific dune, I ain't gonna get signal.
Yeah,
so
fair enough.
I've kind of just at this point, usually when I'm out there, I'll like just record stuff and then make it up to that dune and like send it all off at one time. But I was a little bit busy recording a video at the same time for the coffee channel.
Nice.
So I didn't really care too much. I just wanted to make sure people knew, whoever was going to check up on me. And I did get a bunch of people who were like thanking me like, yo, thank you so much. It was like really helpful. I texted some people. I have a kind of a group chat of customers from the farmers market over the last 2 years who know that I do some photography, and they're like, yo, can you like text me if you see that we're going to get Northern Lights? So I sent a bunch of those out, and then I had a couple people come back to me, and it was like their bucket list thing because they're snowbirds or whatever, so they're not here for some of the year, and they're like, yo, this is the first time in my like 50, 60 years of life that I've ever seen anything like that. So anyway,
that's always super cool. That's happened at camp a couple of times where I was like, guys, I'm waking you up. And they're like, I've been out here for, 25 years at camp and I haven't seen them yet. And yeah, it's pretty special. It's cool stuff.
So I'll start from the beginning.
Yeah.
So it was probably a few days ago. We got notified that there was a solar ejection, and then it was confirmed that there was an Earth-directed CME. So that's like the mass of photons and all the energy that actually is produced as a result of the solar ejection. And we thought it was going to hit a lot later, like at least another day. The funny thing about these good shows that come fast are that when they are moving fast, when the solar wind speed is fast in these CMEs, it's hard to actually get accurate data about when it is going to hit. So like you're like measuring against points in time, but when the solar wind speed is a lot faster than normal, it can be really difficult. So it actually arrived about 14 hours earlier.
Word.
And luckily for me, I check my one app that I use a lot, and did notice that places like Iceland and Scotland, actually that was my big like red flag, was that Scotland was getting an amazing show, which the UK, they're a little bit further north than we are, but not nearly as far north as like Iceland. Yeah. So when Scotland was seeing big stuff, I was like, okay, this actually means something.
That's a good little tip.
Yeah. That app is good for that because there's a lot of UK based users on that app. So when I'm checking it and there's definitely a show, there's at least a dozen reports with pictures, with locations, with times. It's like, okay, cool.
And that's like 6 hours ahead of us?
Yeah, 4 to 5, I think.
Okay, yeah.
Which is a great heads up because it's like, a little before sunset, I can plan for it. So I get out there And pretty much immediately, I just started looking. I could see some milky haze with my eyes, and I knew what it was. And it was okay to start. And I got both cameras out because I figured, knowing that this probably is going to build up as it does over time. Usually, if it's a good show, it starts okay and then builds up to about midnight, and then the ovation actually crosses over, and then it usually dies back down. That's how it typically goes, and there's definitely some outliers, but I kind of knew ahead of time that I had a little bit of time if I was going to make a coffee video and then focus on the photography, that's the way it should be done.
Nice.
So I did the coffee stuff first, and I'll go over how that video went. And I don't mind spoiling it, but
is it already up?
No. I have to edit it. I'm actually in the middle of doing some time-lapse sequences. So
cool.
I'm seeing some of the image sequences that I actually made, and it looks like it's going to be a pretty cool video.
Sweet.
Yeah, so I get to recording my coffee video, and I was like, all right, cool. This video is going to be bomb. There's like almost no shot that there's not going to be northern lights, so I'm going to make coffee under the northern lights. I know how I want to even frame this. I wanted to have the 50 mil like pulled way back so that like it's not super tight on me, but like the background is compressed, so you see like the northern lights going kind of wild behind me.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, cool. I know exactly like how the main sequence is going to look when I'm brewing this coffee. And I wanted to do inverted AeroPress, so there's like a little pour action. And what ended up happening was my headlamp died pretty much as soon as I got to like the spot that I wanted to start brewing coffee. So I was like, crap. All right. Well, I used this light, this little key light thing I have over here. And instead of like just holding it, I set it down below from underneath the little table set that I have. And so like between the slats, I could see a little bit of what was going on, but it was still pretty dark. So I got to brewing this coffee. I set it all up. It's brewing like 2 or 3 minutes in. I'm just like getting ready. And my mind's racing about the aurora and all that stuff. And thinking about the recording. And so I just like totally blank for like a minute or two, and I get back to it, and I flip the AeroPress over onto my cup, and it swooshes way down super fast. And I'm like, oh, I did not just do that. And I thought at first that I didn't screw the cap on back entirely tight. And so like it fell in with the filter and all the grounds in the cup. And definitely all the grounds went into the freaking cup. But I didn't even put the cap back on at all. So like inverted AeroPress was just like sitting there. And without a cap or filter, I just dumped everything into the cup. And so like in real time, I didn't plan for this, in real time. And I only brought 20 grams of coffee. And I used it all in that one brew. Oh. And so I had no coffee to drink that whole night. And I just dumped it all in this cup. And all the grounds are floating in this cup. And I'm like, all I could do was like a solid 15 seconds of like silence of like, I cannot believe I just did that. And then I laugh because like, what else am I going to do with the northern lights popping off behind me? And like, I don't know, I have snacks and water, I guess. So I tried the coffee. I tried it, and it was so bitter, like extremely bitter, like terrible. Anyway, so I didn't end the coffee video. It was very brutal. I was very mad at myself. I laughed, but then like after, as I'm like still filming this video, I bring it back up going, man, I really wish I had some goddamn coffee right now. And like I go over some of the things I could have done to avoid that. But that's kind of how the coffee video went. So in the middle of everything going on, that was kind of like the culmination of my video, my filming. But the rest of the night was great. The northern lights really popped off for a good solid 3.5 hours. And then we had, by the end of it, around 1 o'clock in the morning, we had what is known as Steve appear, which is an
Bloody
acronym.
Steve.
Yeah, Steve. Strong. Let me see if I can remember this. Strong thermal emission. Oh, I already forgot it. Velocity something. Anyway, it's an acronym. It's a terrible acronym. And the guy who made it, his name is probably Steve, and I hate you, Steve. No, I'm just kidding. I don't hate you. But the phenomenon is really interesting. And I've seen it probably 4 times now. Very rare. And like you can have amazing northern lights, like once in a lifetime type of shows that you'd see and not see Steve. It's a phenomenon that is kind of like air glow. Are you familiar with air glow?
Yeah.
We talked about this before.
Mm-hmm.
So it actually forms similar to air glow, but is reactive with the actual CME. So it's not technically northern lights, but it definitely is a result of the same stuff that makes the northern lights. And so what it looks like is, instead of whatever's happening on the north horizon, all of that is going on, because you pretty much can't have Steve without the northern lights. That'd be really an interesting thing to have happen. But instead, you'll notice like straight up above, usually, and I've seen it in a couple different directions, but usually what you see is this jet stream band that moves quite fluidly, and it's really interesting to watch. But it's like this arc that goes from like west to east, and doesn't really come down on the northern horizon at all. And what it ended up looking like was this like cascading ribbon, sort of like what the northern lights looks like from the Arctic Circle, where like in Iceland or wherever, all the northern lights kind of ribbon and cascade above your head. This Steve phenomenon kind of does that, but way lower latitudes, so like above our heads.
Yeah.
So it's really, really interesting, and it doesn't happen often at all, and it's still being studied a lot. Not everything is known about what actually makes this work and happen, and it's not predictable like at all right now. It's kind of like red sprites. I don't know if you were looking more into that after we talked about it.
It's wild.
But there's like, okay, a certain conditions have to be met for it to be possible, but you could chase all your life and not see Steve. There's definitely people that probably will end up having that be the case.
Yeah, I have not seen it, and again, I've only got a couple under my belt and one pretty solid one under my belt. But it's certainly trippy. Some of the photos of it are wild.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that extra sauce on top of a Northern Lights image.
It definitely is, because if you're an astrophotographer, you probably also try to take photos of the Milky Way.
Which, yeah, I've seen those. That's crazy.
When Steve happens, it often is such that it lines up in cool ways with the core of the Milky Way. So like last night, it was crossing over the southwest. And so I was able to look completely opposite of the direction of the aurora going on and see this jet stream of what looks like northern lights just cascading over the core of the Milky Way. So that was the end of the night, basically. Like once that was like, I watched it in real time, like a half hour. Like that's all the time it was from start to finish. And you could see it go from east. Watching it, I took pictures. I was like, okay, that looks kind of like Steve. And I was like, I'm going to watch this for a bit. And certainly it went bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it finally like shot out, cascading all the way to the west. And so it kind of follows the ovation model of building on one side and then completing its journey over to the other side of the horizon. So that was the end of the night. Once that died down, the aurora kind of fizzled down. But the funny thing is, when I left at 1:30ish, like the aurora was still looking good enough that I'd be super excited if that's the way it looked when I got there.
Sure.
Like, it wasn't dead. It was still going, but I, got stuff to do. So I got everything I wanted to get from the night. Had a great time doing it. And pictures are coming, and a video is coming, and the video is going to be, it's going to be something with all that footage of the Northern Lights. With the A7 IV, I actually wanted to make sure I used more of that camera to do some of the live footage stuff, because the last time I did a video, the Coffee Under the Stars one, I used the A7C, and the noise from it was pretty bad. So I'm hoping that the A7 IV will handle better. And I was shooting at like ISO 50, 2000 or whatever for a lot of it, so it's going to be gnarly.
Did you do it in S-Log, or were you in?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
Yeah, so we'll see how it goes. And then the time-lapse stuff should look actually fantastic, because it's just photos that.
Right.
So I had a great time. That was the night, and it's one of those unforgettable nights.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I'm excited to see it. You said you were going to do it, and I was like, okay. And I think you went out and tried like a few days before or something, right? Like, weren't you out there?
That's when I did the Coffee Under the Stars video.
Yeah,
they never showed. Yep.
Yeah, so I was like, oh yeah, okay, well, like have a good night, Godspeed or whatever, and you're like, yeah, it looks
Yeah.
like it's gonna be pretty good.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, it felt like it was shortly after, but it could have been whenever I was playing a little bit of games yesterday. And then I look at your story, and your freaking story video is like, jeez,
Yeah.
you're like, they're out, baby. And I was like, what the hell?
Yeah.
It was
there
like
was no waiting.
Yeah, it was like magnificent. It was awesome. So it's always good when you don't have to try too hard to get some good stuff. And I saw your post, and I'm excited to see the rest of it because it looks great, man. Looks freaking awesome.
I pulled out like a dozen shots from the A7 IV, and then I have like 8 sequences of different like 2 to 5 second time lapse sequences for like B-roll and stuff for the video. So it should be pretty cool.
Yeah, hell yeah, I'm excited to see it.
Yeah.
If you don't already follow David's channel, David Sargent Coffee, it's linked, I think, in every episode. Go ahead and give him a sub and check that out because it'll be cool.
Yeah,
And
I'm about to roll over to 500 subs. And the cool thing about my channel is, even though I get into some of the nerdy stuff about like how to brew coffee, what to buy, and like all that kind of stuff, I also do these outdoor vlogs where I do photography. And so if you're like interested in coffee in the slightest, like if you hate coffee, maybe don't sub. But if you like coffee a little bit, but you're actually really into photography, I do these vlogs where I actually like show you the photo journeys that I go on and show the photos and like talk about some of the things that involve the process of that. So it's a really, I think, fun thing to watch, and I enjoy doing it.
Yeah, hell yeah. Well, right on. The main topic I had for this episode that I had planned is still slightly going to lean heavily on you because I assume you have more knowledge about it than I do. But there was an article on Petapixel, and I have always wanted to shoot this, haven't had the opportunity, always kind of like just was busy or whatever, or just like not really interested. But I go through reading this article about the upcoming solar eclipse on October 14th. And so we have an annular solar eclipse, which if you're unfamiliar is when the moon eclipses the sun and there's like a ring left of the sun around the moon. And other than, I think it said next spring, we're probably not going to have a visible solar eclipse in the US for could be 20 years, is what this article said. And I was like, oh, well then like, I can't, unfortunately, in Michigan capture the like full annular eclipse, but there's a chance I can potentially get some kind of partial eclipse because it goes from Oregon down to Texas. The annular does. So they have like the path. It looks like it starts up in Oregon, and then around like 10:30, 11, it'll end up somewhere in Texas. So it kind of cuts across the west.
That's funny. I'll have to double check because I swear when I was going to plan to do this that I thought there was that it crossed paths in like Toledo, which is not terribly far from you, but is that not the case?
No, I do not believe that's the case. Okay. They say that it'll be like partial eclipses will be visible up to like New England, but it looks like the pathing is going to take you from up to Oregon down to Texas. So
interesting. I'll check that again. But I do have a little bit of experience with this. This particular one.
Oh, you might be thinking about the one in April. So the one next spring looks like it's from Texas up to like Maine, and it looks like it cuts into Ohio, like northern Ohio. That would be cool to plan if we want to do a meme and go check it out.
It could be cool. In April, it could be doable for sure because it's before everything really starts picking up again.
Yeah.
So in general, thinking about and planning to shoot a solar eclipse, it's interesting because it's real short-lived. Yeah. You have basically seconds of the actual totality to get it right. And so the most important thing you can do is think about exactly what composition you want for that specific moment. You got seconds. And so there's some people out there, and I really wish I could remember their names, but when the last big one happened, I want to say it was 2017, maybe 2018, I really gave it a shot. And I only have experience doing this with this one, but I really gave it a good go. And if I were to do it again, one of the things I would do is make sure I get the correct filter that goes on your lens. Because I used the Tamron 150-600 back then, which was fine at that kind of lens. You want, this is why I say planning is important, because you only have seconds of totality. You can't exactly take a picture and then like switch up your lens and go find another comp real quick. You have one shot. And so because it was my first try, I didn't want to get too crazy, too experimental. And so I just put the lens on at 600 and basically did a sequence of images every, I want to say every second or maybe every 5 seconds, something like that, until from the start, before there was any kind of blockage of the sun, through totality, and then all the way through. So you saw the whole sequence. And what I did was I composited the progress on one big, like, it was more like a graphic than a photograph. So there was like, I don't know, a dozen different images composited together showing that progress, which I thought was really cool. And certainly it's been done before.
Right.
But the coolest stuff that I see from people are people who really plan out very specific locations, down to monuments, down to the angles and the focal lengths. Some of the stuff that I'd seen involved like, I'm going to be a little vague here because I don't remember names and stuff, but like rock climbers in specific areas on like a specific rock with like cool formations above them, such that like that totality was right above this rock climber and like there was an arch above it. And I have this vision in my head, but I the details are escaping me. Anyway, these people, landscape photographers, astrophotographers, these skills come together to know exactly the kind of conditions that have to line up to get what you want. And planning is so important. So getting something like what's it called, the app that I use is PhotoPills. PhotoPills is a great app in general for photographers.
Yeah.
And you have the ability to track things like the position of the sun, the position of the moon, times of sunrise, sunset, things like that. And I'm not sure if it has information about solar eclipses, but at least knowing where exactly the sun is going to be. Stellarium is another great app for that, because you can use augmented reality and point your phone in the direction of where the sun's going to be. And you can use this and set the date and time to exactly what day. What you can go years ahead of time to plan certain shots out. Use augmented reality and point your phone in the direction of where the sun's going to be. And then if you have a real vision of what kind of shot you want lined up, you can see if it's possible or not.
Right.
On this day, on this time, when totality is complete, where the sun's exactly going to be. So if you want to set yourself apart doing solar eclipses or lunar eclipses, because that's important, you really need to think about these things and plan ahead. If I were to do another one, and I probably will, I will not shoot this at 600 mil and just straight at the sun or whatever, because everyone and their brother and sister has done that kind of shot. There's nothing special about it, but it's really cool. Technically, like, it's really cool to see that you can do it. You know. So if I were to do it again, I'd probably shoot it more at like a 70 to 200 would probably be in my mind for what kind of tool to use to get some environmental context. I'm thinking about things like wildlife photography from like a environmental standpoint, thinking, okay, if this were a bird in like a cool environment, thinking about composition when I do wildlife photography. More these days, I'm backing off a little bit and showing environment and showing behavior with relationships to other animals and things in that environment. So when it comes to like the next solar eclipse, I would probably think about it similarly. How can I show the grand scope of this within this cool environment that I want to do it in? Basically, that's the kind of planning I would start to think about.
For sure. Yeah, I definitely want to try and do at least the spring one. I'm going to figure out something to see if we can get a decent partial from where we're at. Next, what is that, in a couple of weeks from now? I guess almost 1 month from now. So I'll give that a go. But yeah, I'm trying to remember. It was sometime while I was at NCMC where there was Eclipse, and I desperately wanted to shoot it when I was like barely shooting. I had no idea what I was doing, and I can't remember why I didn't try, but It's super nuts. Can you talk about the filter people use? Because I haven't looked it up. I didn't even bother to put a lot of effort into researching, but I figured you would know.
There's definitely, I'm going to do this on the fly. B&H Photo has a filter for solar eclipse. This is important, and learn from my mistakes. I was very, very, very lucky. I instead used an ND10 filter, which is because it's what I had. And I was like looking online, looking for other people who did the same thing, going, can I get away with this? Because shooting the sun directly with 500, 600 millimeters can damage your sensor. If it's a matter of exposing that exposure value plus I would have to imagine some infrared light or something like that can damage your sensor. That's the fact of it. So there's definitely some options that you want to be prepared for. An ND filter, I just wouldn't recommend. Not that, do as I say, not as I do type of thing.
ND 100,000 filters.
Well, I think I was able to get away with, if I had to remember, something like 1/500th of a second on an ND10 with, what was it? It must have been about that because I couldn't have gone much slower than that. But I just wouldn't recommend it, especially with an expensive camera. I was probably using the D810 or something at the time, maybe the D500 actually. Now that I think about it, this one is $249. You do not have to spend that much.
Well, there seems to be a lot of them, and it looks like ND 100,000 is like kind of what people are using for solar photography.
With
the UV IR cut.
Here's the cool thing, though, is that I don't have to, you don't really have to spend like any money. I remember the last big one we had back in like whatever it was, 2018, that NASA was actually sending out free goggles or whatever, free sunglasses.
I remember that.
That exact filter is what you'd put on your lens, that exact thing. So I remember plenty of photographers just getting a bunch of those and rigging up basically just to cover the front element with like 2 or 3 pairs of those sunglasses, and they work perfectly fine. You don't have to spend hardly, like, I don't know what they might be, $5 or something like that to get them. I don't even know where you would get them, but I'm sure you can find them on the internet, Amazon, eBay, whatever. Get those instead, because the ones I just looked up were like a couple $100. You don't have to spend that kind of money. And it's the same filter set. The only advantage is it's probably a screw on, and it'll sit for years. And like you said, it could be 20 years before you use that filter again. Unless you get into more of the shooting the sun for other reasons, like ISS crossovers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And which can be cool too. But for this reason, just get those sunglasses that are specific to that. You can get them cheap.
Yeah. If you like throwing away money, there's some pretty bad ones that are like $35 from random companies. It's probably worth a shot.
It's probably
you're not really dealing with color fidelity. Like, you're not trying to like lock in color, which is like why you buy a more expensive ND, so you don't get like really gross.
And I don't want to knock anybody who maybe did spend $250 on that filter, because I'm sure it's like actual lens quality.
Right.
The glass on it is probably it's probably actually glass, right? Like, it's probably good quality, but to use it like once every decade or something, you don't need to spend that kind of money if you really want to. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. It's super cool. I'm definitely going to see what happens on October 14th.
And April could be a cool one to plan for.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. I think we should talk about that in the future. What's really interesting about October 14th is there is a shotgun match that happens every year since 2020. My buddy Haver passed away. I talked about it a little bit on one of those episodes. And we do an annual, like, Haver shotgun match, and a bunch of the proceeds go to like the like a fund to help people, like youth, start shooting like skeet and stuff, because he was a junior Olympian and everything like that. So it's on that day, and it starts in the morning. So I'm wondering if there's some way in hell that there's like a partial eclipse while I'm doing that, where I can get a really meaningful photo, because I think it must have been just a year before he passed. He got a Nikon D3200, and I was teaching him photography.
Yeah.
And he got super into it. He was like, I need to figure everything out. I think I mentioned we sat down and did like a color blindness test so I could understand like which colors he didn't see well, so I could help him edit the colors of his photos and like all this stuff. He was super, super about it. And like got me shooting more regularly because he was just like, yeah, let's go like wake up at dawn and go to this area. So cool. And like he was like the most enthusiastic guy about anything he did, and he absolutely loved photography. So if I could be shooting a shotgun match, find one of our buddies doing a stage while I could get an eclipse with like a dude like shooting a shotgun, that might be the coolest photo I could make in the next like year.
Yeah, I can imagine that it would certainly be possible. I would just definitely check the trajectory, and the further away from that you are, the less effect there is.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And you might not see much of it at all if you're too pulled back. Like if you're at like 500-600 mil, you can definitely see.
Yeah.
But if you're back at like 24 mil or 50 mil, you might not get any of it.
Oh, we're gonna be on the 2x on the 70-200 for that for sure.
So yeah, you definitely could plan for something.
I'm gonna try to pull it off. Again, I don't know what I'm doing. I have no idea where I'm gonna be at this place, how much sun I'm actually gonna be able to see, but it'll be super epic if I can even get like a kind of decent shot, like something that's not even, you can just kind of notice that the eclipse is happening somewhere off in the distance.
What I'm thinking you could definitely do, just to plan, because it's only a couple of seconds and I'm sure you have the rest of the day to do everything else, plan for a silhouette and expose for the sun.
Oh yeah,
for that
absolutely.
specific shot.
Oh, that's absolutely what I'm doing.
You'll see the effect. Yeah, for sure.
Because like I can just silhouette somebody with a shotgun. That's easy.
Definitely.
That's all I need.
Shot.
Yeah. It's just getting the shot.
You don't really have another option, because if you expose for him, you don't see that. You don't see the effect of the eclipse.
So what could be cool is if somehow I can align the shotgun with the sun and the moon. Like if I have a couple of ideas, I'm just gonna give it a shot. I'll probably like just eat it on that stage, and just like whatever. I don't care about my points or whatever. And then just like try like hell. So it'll be fun. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But it should be good. Hopefully, I'm trying to make it. It's across the state, so like I got a plan, but I have a few weeks to plan. I got to make sure I can get in a squad with guys I know. I don't really want to go and just like have people I don't know shoot with me.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So I'm excited. It should be fun. Yeah. That was pretty much that. I was pretty excited that you did the Northern Lights because, you know, celestial, astral, space, atmosphere, it all kind of relates. It's good fun.
Yeah.
The next article that I have is I think it was in Petapixel, but I have the DXOMark. I don't know that I really put a lot of care into like really, really technical comparisons of lenses and stuff like that. Cause like why? Like that gets so far away from the art when I already care about specs of cameras and stuff that like it doesn't really matter. But what was really interesting is they tested the Sigma 50mm 1.4 and it got like, it's the like top marked lens, I think. It's within the top 3 of all of their lens testing, which is pretty wild. It scored an overall DXOMark score of a 55, which is like the other lenses that are a part of that are like the Noct, which they measured at like a T1.1, so it's not even that sick. I'm trying to find so it looks like the Noct transmission was a 1.1.
That's hilarious. You make that thing just comically ginormous, and it doesn't even hit like less than 1.
Yeah. Well, and we're talking about T-stops, right? Versus you know, and the T-stops on, so that's 1.1. Their 1.2 has a transmission of 1.3. So like they're close.
Yeah.
As far as light transmission goes, and the difference is $2,800 to $8,000. And then your $850 lens has a 1.5, which is really good for a f1.4 lens. Like a lot of like standard f4 lenses push T1.8, T2. So they actually have pretty bad light transmission often. But The distortion's really low. The sharpness is higher than both the Noct and their 85 II.
That's incredible.
It's actually number 1 in sharpness, which is interesting. And guess what is just behind it?
I don't know.
The 70-200 f2.8 G Master 2.
Wow.
So the lens that I like shooting with the most, and your current, like, I assume your favorite lens, you shoot the ever living hell out of it. They are 2 of the sharpest lenses measured by DXOMark. And there's something to that, because banger after banger with my 70-200, you're just like, dude, the 1.450 is God, which, you know, I haven't personally used it yet, but it blazed through the DXOMark stuff, which is awesome. Yeah.
I mean, when I first got the lens, I remember there were very minor things I was a little picky on, and I've really learned to not even think about that anymore. Yeah. It just performs.
Yeah, it's super good. Chromatic aberration to distortion to sharpness to vignetting. It actually has reasonable, just like completely across the board. The chromatic aberration is better than the Noct and the 85-1.8 by a ton.
Yeah.
It's wild. I just thought that was neat, and if you hadn't seen it, I thought you'd probably just be like, hell yeah, home team for your lens. And you know, all of those are measured on the 60 megapixel Sony A7R IV.
It's actually just really cool to see Sigma stack up like that as a company. Like, I'm sure they're really proud of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's probably why it took a little while for them to bring out a new updated 50 mil. Because they're like, no, we're going to make the 50 mil. If we're going to make it, make the damn lens.
That's great.
But yeah, super cool. I found that absolutely fascinating that it scored so high. And it's like hanging out with the Noct. Like, I just think that's funny. Like an $8,000, like, our mount is so big, we can make this crazy 58 mil f9.95. And Sigma's like, hi.
It's what, 0.4 T-stops away or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
And it's almost literally 10 times the price of yours. It's just under 10 times the price, which is cool. Like, I'm going to keep hating on if anybody bought a Noct because I think it's insane. Like, you should probably just, like, adapt, like a Summicron.
Isn't it, like, less than a dozen or something?
No, I think they made a decent number. I think everybody just jokes that, like, 10 people bought it.
Right, okay, yeah. I didn't know.
But I'm sure there's probably not very many.
Right.
I think if I was going to spend like $8K on a lens, I'd definitely be getting near like a really nice cinema lens, or I'd be adapting a Summicron from like those would be the, or I think I'd probably get the Canon 095 Dream lens.
We have different ways we'd spend that kind of budget, because I'm thinking about the wildlife lenses I could afford.
Well, yeah. But like if I'm buying the way too expensive Portrait Prime, right?
Yeah.
I think I'd probably want I want to try a 600 f4. I don't even know what that compression looks like. I've never sat and really shot one.
Right.
So something like that, obviously, but that's $6,000 more.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, super cool. I have only a couple of rumors. I guess I didn't get into what I've been shooting. I've been working on a lot of product photos this week. I'm kind of tired of it. Getting a little demotivated. The winter's coming, so I got to get really, really creative with how I make content for work. But there's been a couple updates in Adobe, and freaking generative fill is nuts.
Yeah.
It's actually so good now that I almost never put a prompt in. I use it more often than not to just get rid of stuff in a scene.
Yeah.
And almost every time it's first try.
Yeah, same.
That's insane to me. Like, I had a shot today that I wanted to use as a background, and I did a very embarrassing, like, gross meme thing that is on my lock screen for Zach to see Thursday when he comes back to work. But I took it's a shot of the range where Zach's in the middle, and then there's a team that's zeroing. So there's like 10 guys laying down prone. I got rid of all 10 people and Zach. He was obscuring the targets. All of the targets in a row look perfect. It looks like the ground is untouched, and it's just a clean slate of the range. And I just think that's incredible. Like,
Yeah.
I couldn't match that light again if I tried. The light was something crazy that day, so everything looks so good. Every photo from that day looks awesome. And so to be able to just take this shot that I'm like, I loved the environment here, and then get rid of people and make it clean. We never have 15 targets up with like new paper. Like that's rare because it's usually him and I. We don't need 15 sheets. So it's just like a really nice clean slate. And it's like, it took me 120 seconds.
Yeah.
That's incredible to me.
Just thinking about it, how long do you think it would have taken you with previous methods?
Dude, it would have been so bad. Because like the plane, there's guys laying down and Zach's in it. Trying to get rid of them cleanly would have been miserable.
Right.
Like there's 10 dudes in kit laying on the ground, and it's all like, it's sandy, like dirt, but then there's like brass casings everywhere, and there's some sticks here and there, and it just went bloop.
Yeah.
Looks perfect. I removed Zach. He's obscuring 2 targets. It perfectly, because there's like 15 in a row, it perfectly built the missing parts of the targets and the stand. Like, it doesn't even look like he was ever standing there.
Wow.
The targets were identical. Everything was exactly how it should have been. And I was like, you got to be kidding me.
That's amazing.
It's magnificent. I couldn't believe it. And that was 6 selections, generative fill, not a single one I had to do even a touch up to.
Did you do them, those 6 separately, or did you just separately do them all in one shot?
I do them all separately. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. I haven't tried making a bunch of individual selections yet. Actually, I should do that.
I have. It works fine.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's just insane.
It just works.
Yeah. I don't know. I've seen some pretty cool stuff online that I want to try. Some pretty trendy stuff. Like, people are so creative, man. Once that took off, there's like some really wild video stuff people have been doing where they're like cycling through stuff, and like it's so cool. But just as a freaking utility for making clean posts for e-commerce or for just our social media, you never have to worry about having something bad in the shot anymore. That's crazy to me. Like, I don't care. You know how many times in my life I've been framing something and I was like, oh, it's so ugly back there. I got to like rechange. Like I have to change. I can't change the subject because I'm like shooting an event or I'm shooting a sport. And like, oh man, this at camp, my boss at camp was so particular about stuff in shots that I'm sure if I hope she knows, I don't really talk to her anymore, but if she doesn't tell her photo people, or if her photo people are like too new and don't know this, she'll never have a problem with a shot again.
Yeah.
You can just like take anything. You could take a child out that looks unhappy. Like, oh, all of these kids look great. He looks miserable. Bloop, gone.
Right.
Beautiful. And you would never know. I know we always are just so exacerbated by the fact that like that's crazy, but
it's just repeatedly impressive. And it's not that we're looking at other people or even the concepts going, oh, that would be cool. We're actually using it for our jobs, going, holy shit, this has made this so much easier. And has done a as good or better job that I would have done spending hours doing it.
The one thing that it doesn't do well is I do a lot of stuff where I'm trying to get a pure black background. And how I do that is I have a big piece of drywall that has like velvet attached to it, because velvet isn't flat, so it's darker often. You know, it doesn't reflect as much light. And so I can get a pretty close background. But if I try, like if I just want to shoot wider and I go wider than the board, and maybe the light's a little meh, or like something's not completely right, I can't just select the outside and not type anything and it be seamless like white.
Really?
I'll see hard lines almost every time I try it with dark blacks. It doesn't like vignette it enough, or so it's always been easier for me to just paint in a dark black background, because it looks at it and it goes, huh. So it'll just make it way too dark, or it'll be too solid. So there's like subtle gradient in the lighting that you can't really see a lot with your eye, But once they just flat black it, it is bad. And you're like, well, that looks like shit.
I do feel like I've run into this situation before, and I have, I believe, overcome it by using the selection, what's it called? Selection masking, where you can actually feather your selection and things like that. And I think I've overcome some of that using generative fill, using that like very modified selection.
Sure.
Maybe give that a shot if you come by it again.
Yeah, I just think it's wild because like I can have no feather a box on like a completely blurry F1.4 like trees with lights and sand, and then it just looks seamless.
It gets it.
Sometimes you'll see a little bit of a box, and then I've just used spot healing, and then it kind of like dissolves the like box.
Sure.
But a lot of the time, you're like, it's gone. I don't see anything. Right. I already had made the thumbnail to this episode, and it's I used a photo from Bill Ingalls, a guy shooting for NASA. He's got a shot behind, I think it's the White House, of a partial eclipse. And I generative filled it so it'd be 16:9. And then it added some weird stuff to it, so I went through and made a couple more selections and got rid of it. But like one of the crazy things it did was like to the right of the White House or whatever, it just put like a big crane, like, and it's like because the building in the foreground is completely harsh silhouette. And then it's like, a crane would look real good right here. And you're like, hold on. Like, I'm very clearly trying to get rid of, like, the weird warble that you did. I'm selecting all of the warble across, like, mostly, like, an orange gradient sky. And then it was like, yeah, dude, it would look sick, dog, a freaking crane. And you're like, okay, dude.
I also don't really prompt it ever. But it's like, can you blame it if you didn't prompt it?
Yeah, right.
It doesn't know what you wanted.
It's like,
Did you like what I got?
It's that's how you think it's actually like a AI brain. Like it's
right.
Like we don't even know because we're so stupid. But it's like, yeah, dude. Like I guess my job, it's like mostly programmed, but it actually thinks. And it's like, I don't know, dude. I've seen a lot of silhouettes. I've powered through 68 trillion photos. Silhouette looks sick, dog. I love cranes. Like, and then like that's what it spits out, and you're just no, Adobe, Sensei, or whatever you want to call it. No.
That's funny.
But yeah, it's cool. It's been fun editing creatively using it and things like that. But I definitely want to use some of the frame by frame stuff if you haven't seen it, listeners, on like Instagram. There's been some fashion people that like it'll be like a 16-second clip of like a model standing there and like movement, but then they'll take every frame and they'll change the jacket they wore. So it like cycles through a bunch of jackets, but there's movement. So it looks super sick. And then some dude had a camera and the camera was like changing a bunch in his hand as he like took a photo. And like one dude's glasses was just changing, but the rest was, it's freaking wild. You just frame by frame it and you can just generative fill like one part of the.
Well, I'm even wondering like how creative people can get with what's it called? The batch processing and then the actions. I wonder if you can make an action and batch process that action like a million times and make like a time lapse. Like
so if you can make a selection and then have an action that just goes.
Exactly.
I bet, man. I freaking bet. I'm gonna try it now.
I want to try it.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I would have done it just the hard way. You might as well record doing it the hard way so you can have an action.
I haven't actually had a legitimate use for the batch processing feature since like CS4, but now I really want to try this.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't think I've ever used the batch processing, but I use actions for lots of stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, right on. Anyway, Adobe's wild, and it is exactly why I'll probably keep subscribing to their stupid asses. So
yeah, which also reminds me that I did see that they're potentially raising the price for the subscription. Did you see this?
I didn't, but I'm going to keep yelling at them and saying I'm going to quit. And then if they just tell me to eat sand, I'm going to switch to DaVinci and go to photo only. It'll just force my hand. Like,
for sure, there's alternatives that I've tried, like Darktable and DaVinci too.
For photo, I hate the options. For video, it sucks because my workflow is dedicated to Premiere, so I haven't like been forced. But if it becomes unruly in cost, I'll probably eat it and then just use Premiere at work because they pay for my Adobe that I use at work.
Right.
So
I didn't see any details. I don't even know if it's true. I just thought maybe you had seen it somewhere, but I'm gonna keep my eye on it because I definitely if they increase the price even. I don't know what it would take, what that number would look like, but I would definitely be considering looking at some of the other like pay one-time options because there's other photographers that I know that use other platforms and they they have loved it since switching without ever paying a subscription fee ever again.
The closest is still Capture One for me.
Yeah,
and I've used it a few times, but there's just like I don't know that I want to get rid of like if they just keep.
I know.
If it's sub $20 for Photoshop and Lightroom, I'll probably just forever have it. But dude, I don't want to pay $52. Like I'm not going to pay $50 for Adobe.
I think I'm paying $35, and if they up it like another even $10, I'll learn DaVinci.
Yeah,
I'm done. I'll go back down to the photography, and I'll pay $20 maybe for that. Yeah, but I'm not gonna pay $50 anymore.
I'm like I don't do enough freelance to pay for Adobe right now, dude.
Right.
Like, and you know, I get Premiere. Well, unfortunately, it's not my Premiere, so I share Premiere with my boss. Or I share Adobe with my boss at work, so I can't even use one of those at my house or anything. Right. I just use it at work, things like that. So I can't even cheat it, but that's unfortunate. I hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep my eye on it.
Yeah, so just got a couple of rumors that I saw. Nothing big, nothing exciting or anything, but like G9II pre-orders were really low, which isn't super surprising. Because they made the body so damn big. It's not necessarily a cheap camera, but it's the size of some full frame small cameras. So like, you're like, oh, cool, but our camera's super good. It's like, yeah, but you made it the size of a full frame.
Right. And that was like, isn't that a bragging point of Micro Four Thirds?
Yeah, the lenses are tiny. Like you get some incredible stuff out of like the freaking 12 to 35, which is like a 24 to 70. It's little. Like when I traveled Japan, I had the 42, I think 42.7 millimeter or whatever. It's basically an 85 mil, which is like, it makes your freaking that 35 f2.8 that you had makes that look kind of big.
Whoa,
it's that small, and then the 12 to 35 is super tiny. I mean, it's a full standard zoom. But then you're going to put it on a body that almost the size of a freaking A7 IV.
Yeah, that's weird. That's awkward.
Yeah, no thanks. Like I'd get an S5 II, I guess, and just like eat it.
Do you think it has anything to do with, like super long telephotos and balancing?
I mean, maybe a little bit, but even their telephotos aren't that big.
Right. Yeah. I had no idea. I've never played in that system.
It looks like they pretty much used the S5 II body.
Right.
It doesn't have the fan because it doesn't need it. It's got a way smaller sensor and stuff. So, but other than that, it looks pretty much like the S5 II. So that could probably be it. Like if I want a tiny camera, I want a tiny camera. Like you're probably going to go to Fuji if you still want a relatively small camera. And even some of theirs are getting big, but they make small cameras. Or you'd get, a 6700 or something at this point, right? Mm-hmm. In fact, I kind of want to see a comparison of a A7C II next to a freaking G9II now, because if that's like a significantly smaller camera, I wouldn't pick up a G9II.
Yeah,
funny. Yeah, wild. And then it looks like, unfortunately, Sony is doing a ZVE10 II by the end of the year, which no one cares for. It's gonna be an A6700, I feel like, but with like the ZVE10 vloggy stuff.
Yeah.
So maybe a little bit more forgiving on some of the video features. That's dumb, but
it must have sold a lot.
I mean, I'm sure they did. People have been waiting for an update to the 6600. Right. So I'm sure the A6700 did well. But apparently they have an 80 or 100 megapixel quad pixel autofocus sensor coming out. You know, competing with the rumors that Canon had a while back.
That's kind of out of nowhere, isn't it?
It is kind of out. Well, I mean, they make crazy sensors, so it is what it is. But looks like 2 new sensors already. Oh no! So it looks like an 80 megapixel plus quad pixel autofocus and 100 megapixel sensor. So they got 2 new fat boys. Okay. I could see that 100 megapixel not being used in a Sony camera.
Sure.
That's very likely.
Well, we're not getting an A7R6 anytime soon.
No, so. Unless they do an A2 and they're like, get the A2 or the A1 II. It's 100 megapixels.
They would need also a significant processor bump to pair with that.
Oh,
to make that even make any kind of sense.
Yeah. But that 80 megapixel, that sounds like an A1 II or an A2.
Could be.
You know, where do you go from AI autofocus? Like, their autofocus is nuts now. And in fact, it's made me realize I don't use like any features. I barely use tracking. I barely use anything. I use my freaking autofocus like a DSLR that goes fast. Like I'm always on like extended zone or whatever, that little box with the extra stuff. I'm usually on that or large or small, single point and continuous. And I just...
That's funny. I actually switch it up a lot depending on what I'm shooting for wildlife.
Oh, yeah, no. I really hate when I'm shooting like something happening and then I want a detail shot and I can't just right then and there move my dot and go, that's what I want to focus. I hate it. It makes me so mad. So like big autofocus zones and stuff like that where you let the camera do the work, it makes me so upset. So
definitely a different scenario. Yeah.
I also have my touchscreen turned off, so maybe I feel like having that for like tap to focus and track is probably good. I'm just a boomer apparently. I don't know what
I do not use it for tracking. However, I like to keep my touchscreen on, and it works out really well for astrophotography to help me focus. So I'll double tap on a star real quick, so I don't have to like move my thumbstick like up to get to a star. Sure. Double tap on that star, zooms in real quick, focus, get right out of it. Makes it super fast for that.
That's fair. You're talking about for like magnification?
Yeah, magnification. That's all. Yeah. Not for AF assistance at all, really.
I feel like that's probably what I could use. I'm an idiot. Like I said, I basically just run it like it's the autofocus is good. So all I need is a point, and then it does all.
It's just for manual focus assistance.
Yeah, I don't do that.
Yeah.
I just keep my freaking thing off.
For landscape photography, and then for like the closer, intimate. I mean, you do some of the like some detailed shots, but you probably never do it in manual focus. But I do, like on a tripod and like getting really, really, really into it, like super close, like magnify, check exactly where that plane of focus is on which detail. So I do that. Just double tap.
Yeah, I mean, I guess even on macro, maybe I have good eyes. I thought I had bad eyes. I don't know. I just kind of I let it work.
I don't know, man. That's my workflow. It's quick.
Yeah, you've sold me. I need to use it. Like I have to grow up, but I'm saying I'm an idiot.
Nah,
that's hilarious. Because like I really hate the auto. Like if you just go into manual and it's full time zoom in, like when it does that, like so I'm just like, get away from me. I never want it to happen. But I guess because I've never had my freaking touchscreen on, I've never had the ability to just zoom in only when I needed it.
That's exactly all.
And all of my custom keys are set, so I can't set one to zoom in for focus assist. Yeah, well, all right. Maybe I'll try to figure out if there is a button if I can toggle on and off touch, and then only toggle on touch when I want to double tap.
It might be possible. There's a lot of options for what you can and can't customize, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was just like, for whatever reason, not one of those.
Yeah, it'll be the one thing that I can't do.
Yeah,
and then my next intro will be it is 9 whatever 2023, and Sony doesn't let me toggle my freaking touchscreen with a button.
6 month rant of you on the Facebook comments typing that over and over every time you post something.
That's a cool new A7S IV. Can you please let me toggle freaking? And it's like, geez, Korey, it's 2026, dog. Can you get over it?
Let it go.
Yeah, I'm petty. I'm Tom Petty. She's a good girl. Loves her mama. That's all I have today.
Yeah.
That was solid. I'm glad we touched on those things. A lot of good conversation about actually shooting.
Yeah.
If you are listening still, thank you. You're the best of the people that listen to us, that you're all the way to the end. Next month, at some point, we are going to do our photo share again. The topic, the prompt is still spaces. Mm-hmm. The email is in the show notes. If you would like to submit an image that you take with the prompt spaces, it can be anything, whatever that means to you. Interior, exterior, your pocket, inside of a bag, inside of a car, scary hallway, liminal spaces. Big fan of liminal spaces. Anything. We're just going to share them and talk about them. They're going to make us feel a type of way, and we'll talk about how they make us feel. Other than that, if you want to comment, if you have any experience with the Northern Lights or eclipses, I have a lot to learn about eclipse photography, and I would love to hear some of your stories. I would also love if you would share this with someone that you think would like it, potentially review it. We love that you're still here. You got anything for him, David?
That's it. That was a great wrap up. Thanks for listening, guys.
Talk to you in the next one.
Bye.